Montreal, my God! Hundreds of cultures and languages, 6 universities, and 12 junior colleges. I got here in 1988, and it's never stopped nourishing my intellect and filling me with hope. Remember the most amazing conversations you ever had? How alive you felt? Remember how the music sounded? A life like that never stopped in Montreal. Its sidewalk cafes buzz and pop with debate, laughter, and most of all, stimulating topics. Not gossip, not glibness, just enthusiasm and deep, challenging thoughts. These people are a treat. Come meet them with me. I'm Mike Rudd, a Montreal jazz guitar player with a passion for science, philosophy, history, literature, and of course, music. Over the years, I've met and learned from a small army of people here who, like me, couldn't resist the allure of this beautiful region. I've kept in touch with these amazing people for you. They're waiting in this enticing place to talk to you about crucial ideas, the stuff that makes life so interesting. Come now, listen in and enjoy my view from Montreal. Dr. Daniel J. Levitin worked as a record producer and an engineer with people like the Grateful Dead and Santana, but for years now, he's been a leading neuroscientist and author. So many times, musicians or music lovers have told me about this amazing book I need to read about music and the brain. It's always with great relish that I tell them that, yes, I do know that book and its author. I even got to work in his lab for much of 2008. Dan Levitin is a psychologist at McGill University. And that book, This Is Your Brain on Music, along with his second, The World in 6 Songs, made him a New York Times best-selling author, and without question, the world's best-known authority on music and the brain. As a public speaker and science writer, the man has got the gift. He writes engagingly, lucidly, and persuasively. Any of his books are a feast. But I think his last one, The Organized Mind, might just be the best one. Dan unpacks more recent models of how the mind works to shed light on powerful techniques for effectively accomplishing what matters to us in life. He talks eloquently about the brain's categorization systems and how new research shows us the way our attentional system works. The consequences of this research are immensely useful. Do you want to spend more of your time free of worry so that you can bring value into the lives of those you love? There are techniques in the organized mind that get you right to what matters in your life, diminishing distraction. Unlike almost any self-help books you have read, the organized mind tells you what's going on in recently discovered neurological systems and shows you how to optimize this to accomplish goals. Dan graciously sat down to talk with me about a very wide range of material, from how to clear your mind to the fractal predictability in music rhythms that allows us to understand even specific composers in terms of the same geometry that describes nature from sunflowers to coastlines. Hi, Dan.
Hi, Mike.
So this new book of yours, Dan, The Organized Mind, seems at first like a total departure from your previous work on music. How does the psychology of music relate to how we organize our lives?
I was trained as a cognitive neuroscientist, and I've turned that training and that focus to what happens in the musician brain because it's something that interests me and it's something that had been understudied. But in the course of my daily work as a neuroscientist, as someone who studies attention and memory, I realized I had acquired a bunch of information that I think most people don't know about how attention and memory work, and that I think the average person could find useful in terms of better organizing their time, their homes, their workplaces, their decision-making, and their social relationships.
Right. So that's how you wind up writing about such seemingly different things as music cognition and organization. The organized mind is crammed with techniques for working with your brain systems instead of working against them. For me, maybe the most immediately useful one was David Allen's advice to write down each thing we want to get done on a separate recipe card. then order and reorder these as the day or week goes on. It sounds really basic. I mean, who hasn't heard of a to-do list? But I've got to say that this has changed my life. He likens this type of to-do list to a bucket into which we empty all our cares, freeing us to engage fully in any given task, without the nagging feeling that we should also be remembering all the other things we need to do that day at the same time. Your book gets right into this and to why it really does work. Do you think we can really find a series of tricks like this that can hack our systems into working better?
I guess the word tricks kind of doesn't feel right to me, because when we talk about, for example, a magician performing a trick, what it means is that they're not really doing what it appears they're doing. But you're right, these are heuristics, they're techniques, they're a bunch of things that work, and they're based on neuroscience. And I learned about them in many cases from the opportunity I had to spend time with some really highly productive people, government leaders, CEOs of large corporations, Nobel Prize winners, artists, rock stars. And David Allen is right. Writing these things down, whether it's on recipe cards or in a notebook, really clears the mind and frees the attentional system to allow you to focus on what's in front of you.
So much seems to hinge on the attentional system, and there's a lot of great research that you talk about with respect to that. What appealed to me kind of philosophically was that this could be a way of getting at the very sexy questions of consciousness without being weighed down by the thousands of years of philosophical framings of consciousness.
You're absolutely right. Attention and consciousness are inextricably linked, and people who study one are by necessity studying the other, although they may talk about them differently and call them something different. I'm interested in how we pay attention to different aspects of music and why we attend to some and not others. You could say why we're conscious of some and not others. And in the organized mind, I'm interested in, more broadly speaking, about how our consciousness of what's going on in the world around us can either help us or hurt us.
I've seen you play the guitar. I've seen you sing. I've seen you play the saxophone. Do you still get to play these days? Have you found that studying the psychology of music affects the process of playing?
I do get to play. I play the guitar almost every day just for my own enjoyment, and I'm still writing songs as I always had. I'd say that the quality of the public performances I'm doing has really increased. I have this little show that I do with different musicians where the basic format is the two of us take a stage and we talk about music and creativity. I add in a little bit about what's going on in the brain, and then we play some songs together, which is wonderful for me because although I've been a musician for all my life, I wouldn't say I'm on anybody's list of the person to call if you need a guitar player. Roseanne Cash and David Byrne and Bobby McFerrin, who I've had the chance to perform with. I mean, when they're thinking of a guitar player, they wouldn't think of me. It's just that this format allows us to each bring our unique backgrounds and abilities to it. And, I'm a good enough musician that I can pull it off. And it's wonderfully rewarding to be able to play with all these different musicians, as it's been rewarding for me to be able to play with you. In terms of whether psychology of music affects the process of playing, I would say it does, but not in the way you might think. I now understand better how to practice. I understand the importance of spaced versus massed practice. That is, practice a little bit throughout the day rather than all in one block, and practice every day of the week rather than just a couple hours on Sunday or something like that, which a lot of amateurs do, and it prevents them from really getting any farther.
I think there's a common idea out there that analysis leads to paralysis, a kind of fear that thinking too rationally about the process could stultify it. What would you say to address that fear?
I felt that same fear myself. and it turns out it's completely unfounded. It's For one thing, a number of great players think very rationally about music. Quincy Jones, Frank Zappa, they, certainly the classical composers. There's every evidence that they thought very deliberately about what they were doing, and it didn't stultify the process. And also, I'd have to say that in my own life, every time that I've been on the verge of uncovering the answer to some question or mystery, 5 new ones popped up to take its place, and they were even better than the last. And if anything, having been a scientist studying music, I like music even more than ever, because I appreciate how very many things have to happen in the body and the brain for it to reach us, for it to work, and for somebody to be able to play it. And you're right, in my work, I'm not investigating the music, but certainly musicologists do, music historians and composers trying to figure things out. I don't know if you read Bob Dylan's autobiography, but he took a very deliberate, analytical, and logical approach to deconstructing the songs that he liked so he could figure out how to write songs of his own.
So this is really interesting. A couple of years ago, you published a paper with Vinod Menon, whose name I recognize from some of the work you talked about in This Is Your Brain on Music, and with Parag Kordia. The paper's called Musical Rhythm Spectra from Bach to Joplin, Obey a 1/F Power Law. I'm kind of proud I got that out. In it, you analyzed 1,788 movements from 558 classical compositions, and you compared 16 subgenres of classical music and 40 composers. You found an actual way to get precise about predictability in musical rhythms. The predictability of musical rhythms. And you actually identified a law about this predictability, a law that reliably identified even individual composers just on the basis of how they fit into this mathematical model. This is amazing. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, what we were after was exactly as you say, a set of equations that describe some of the structure in music, in our case, the rhythmic structure of music. And we knew that there would be something there. We knew that it would be a 1/F law. That's why we went looking for it. So we weren't that surprised that we found it, but we were delighted, and of course it was news. What the law reveals really is that there's some latent structure having to do with fractals. So fractals are mathematical structures that resemble themselves, and we see that fractal geometry pervades the natural world. It describes plants and coastlines, and even this 1/F law even describes the nature and severity and likelihood of occurrence of earthquakes and other natural disasters. What we're really saying is that there's structure in the world, and there's structure in music. And for me, the interesting thing is that it suggests very strongly that the human brain became sensitive to the structure that we see, the mathematical structure latent in the way plants and animals are formed. And we created music that reflected or mirrored that structure. So I wouldn't say it's a coincidence that it's there. I'd say it's there because we evolved to notice and appreciate the structure, and so we notice and appreciate it in music.
Dan, I really want to thank you for this. It's always fascinating talking to you. I hope we can do it again sometime.
Thank you for having me, Mike. It was great to talk to you.
Check out my other interviews with interesting thinkers from the sciences and arts. If anyone has any questions for the blog, you can reach me at michaeljamesrudd@gmail.com. That's michaeljamesrudd with 1D at gmail.com. Thanks to Tony Chamberlist for sound production, and thank you for listening.